Back to Islam Media. We got our second podcast of the year already in less than a week. So today we're going to be looking at the not the GM pairings, but the player pool previews. So as usual, I have with me Hanan and Omar, both of you.
Assalamualaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome.
So guys, you guys all got the pool, right? The pool of players, and wanted to get your thoughts on what you think. I think the players that go or will go in the top half of things is, or sorry, the first round is pretty easy to predict. But I want to focus more on sort of the mid tier and the lower tiers, and just see where the second and third line guys will pan out. So why don't we start off with you, Omar? Who do you think will be the first rounds and then the seconds?
You like the list players? I mean, we you have like your perennial first rounders, right? You have like your Adil Johan, you have your Razi, you have Imad Khwaja, Wakar, Arsal, Salman. All of these guys are top tier, top quality guys. I mean Salman Khalid. You have Naeem, Akhtar. You have Hamoudi. You have guys that will always go in the first round, if not on the snake on the second round. And so
Yeah.
I think we have guys like Farouk Sani, right? He's also an impact player that plays on the first line. So we have quite a few players, I think, that are worthy, if you will, of that first round selection.
Mhm.
I
And
th-
then, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying. I know the cool thing I like about the first round is that the selection of players are people you could see themselves as being the GMs as well, or they have been GMs in a past life in Iceland as well. Razi's been a GM, Adil Johan last season, Yusuf Sodagar, Wakar. Like these are people like their label is going in the first round, and I think not only for their leadership ability, but they do have talent. It's for me personally, and I don't know about you, sorry, but when I look at the player roster, I think you start getting to unfamiliar territory by the third round. I think the first two rounds is you have your typecasted. These are the top, like these are definitely going to go in the top two rounds. It's just a matter of who picks who where or what the team's needs are. But it's that third round, and I think that's where I even get a little shaky, where I'm like I don't even know. I think for me, with the amount of depth they have, I think we're going to start seeing a lot of uncertainty by the third round.
Oh, I agree with you. And I would, if I would be so bold as to say, I think drafts are won in the fourth round and on,
Yeah.
right? I fully, kind of what you're getting, and we've seen time and time again, and at least in Islam, is that your first line cannot win you a game, right? They can probably keep it close, but you need contribution from your second line. You need contribution from your third line, whether that be scoring or energy. But if you don't have it throughout your lineup, then it negatively affects the team. So you look at teams like traditionally how Lukman and Akib have drafted, right? They've drafted teams that can contribute throughout the lineup.
Mhm.
You look at Orange from last year, our team, right? You had individuals that contributed throughout the lineup. So my argument is I think that if you draft well, you draft strong, you win the draft. You win. You put yourself in a position to win the league and or the playoffs from the fourth round and on. I think.
Given the amount of depth, and you've seen the player roster themselves, and without name dropping anyone specifically, looking at some of the trends, the way GMs have drafted in the past, we see some GMs, wait until the very last round to get their goalie pick. Or we've seen some GMs, Farouk Khan and I think Kazi, are pick their GM pick or goalie picks very early on within the second or third round. A second round being, it's a snake around, so you get the second and third pick at the same time. Strategy wise, do you think it's a bold move to have your goalie pick within the third round, or do you feel like there's just way too much depth at this point in time to even consider picking a goalie that early?
I think personally speaking, and again, I think that goalies are a sensitive bunch, but if if I looked at the goalie pool,
Yep.
if I was a GM, I would want to secure the goalie that I wanted as early as possible. Now, I wouldn't go pick a goalie in the first round. I don't think that would be wise. But I think I would probably, uh, I would anticipate goalies going in the late third, early fourth rounds in this draft. personally. And to your point about depth, is if the player pool is has strong depth, then you can maybe take a gamble on a goalie early, right? And you can still be relatively confident that a strong player will be still available after that round.
Fair enough. For me, and I guess I want to get your opinion on this, is for the second line for teams, and that's where games are usually fought and won over. Out of all the players in the draft, who do you feel is a strong second round or second line pick that brings that leadership quality to help make your second line win?
Well, I mean, there's one player that in particular that I feel fits this bill quite well, and it's a player that can play up and down in the lineup, right? So you have a guy like EBP, right?
Mm-hmm.
EBP for me, he can play on the first line or he can anchor a second line. He goes into the tough areas right in front of the net, and he's a really just a really really difficult player to deal. Like as a defenseman, he's a very difficult player to deal with in front of the net. And so from what I've seen recently, I've seen that, he will play the power play unit, that, PP1, right? But then
Yeah.
he'll also anchor like a second line. And for me, that would be sort of, my pick for an impact second line player.
Impact Steel Impact. And that's Irfan Banapatel for anyone watching and not familiar with the abbreviations yet. For me specifically, from what I've seen, I don't. It's tough. I think EBP is definitely a strong choice. Uh, and I've seen, this is a pick that I've seen the Suleiman brothers and Jihad always pick is Ibrahim Hindi as your second line star. So someone who has a lot of veteran presence, who's been in the league for quite some time. I believe he's a shadow GM, as I call it, for one of the teams last season when they weren't able to make the picks themselves. So he definitely knows the roster and the depth. And he's able to bring that leadership qualities on that second line. And I think he plays center, if I'm not correct, if I'm not mistaken. And I think, being able to see and have that vision of, both ends of the ice makes him a very versatile second line pick.
What do you think? You were a GM last season.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with the stuff that you guys have been saying. Like, I think most GMs will have a comfort zone of what players they want. They have a core, they have a general idea, and I see it time and time again that in the draft there's someone you want, and lo and behold, the GM just before you snipes that person, right? And then you're pissed off and you're scurrying for someone, and then you just end up picking someone else, right? But generally speaking, the GMs have players in mind, and if they can't get those players, they try to replicate it by putting someone else of the similar caliber. So I think the first couple of rounds, it'll just be getting people that are either your friends or you want to build that core. And after that, they tend to, pick up, fill it up. Now, GMs have two type of strategies usually. Some GMs know exactly what type of players they want to fill, so they actually have a list on the side, and they're filling up, line 1 left wing, line 2 right wing, etc., right? And they kind of go through there. Even if there's a better player available, they will pick the spot that they need.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas some other GMs, they go into they're from the school of thought is, you know what, I'm just going to pick the best available player that's on the board right now. We'll go with that until it fills up, and then we'll figure out who's at the end. And if it doesn't work, well, there's always trades to be made. So that's really the two angles that GMs come from.
One of the things I like to see when I look at season over season is how players are trending in terms of, where we've seen them picked in past seasons versus where we're seeing them today. For me, and I'll start it off, is one player in particular I've seen trending upward is Jawad Majid. I believe he was playing with Farouk Khan and the Patel brothers last season, where the prior season I played with him with Ali Wadi, and I think he had 2 points in 8 games, so not a strong performance. But overall, that team didn't have a strong performance. But I saw how he was playing with Irfan Banapatel, and I think the amount of depth he brings to a team, and I definitely think. I'm seeing him continuously trend upwards. And I think last season he was drafted in the 5th round. And for me personally, I think Farouk's the type of guy where he likes players he's played with in the past. And I guarantee you, I believe he's going to end up drafting Jawad again in the 5th round if it's not sniped earlier.
So he played forward last season?
Jawad Majid? Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. I mean, from what I've used, typically, if what I've seen in the past, he's played defense, and he is a very underrated guy. He's very strong on the ball.
Mhm.
He's not so keen on shooting,
Yeah.
but he will make smart plays. He'll make smart passes, and he'll be in the right position. So, I can definitely see that. Him possibly trending upwards. I guess on the flip side, we also have
So
quite a
sorry,
few players that are. Sorry.
sorry to interrupt you, Omar, but is Jawad even in the draft this year?
I think I saw his name on there. He's definitely. Oh, maybe I'm wrong.
Well, thanks for wasting our time, Hanan.
Well, you know what you want. This is your fault for not joining. Let this be a lesson, I guess,
No,
to me.
well, I'll put it to you this way: like the list that we have on screen right now, this is the finalized version of people who have registered and paid for, etc. So
Got it.
I don't see him on there. However, that is not to say that there might not have been some changes. Maybe somebody dropped out, he went in. But yeah, as good as Jawad is right now, he doesn't seem to be on the list. So
So one name that stands out to me right now from this list, and I'm really excited to see this guy come back, is Shahryar Khan. And for me personally, Omar Sawi, I've always felt like Shahryar on defense was basically you. Like I feel like you guys had the same depth in terms of play style, your wicked shots that everyone will try to avoid. But there's that level of talent, and I think he was injured 3 seasons ago. So I'm happy to see him back. Have you had a chance to play with him? I assume, Omar.
We played in pickup, and actually, funny enough, Shariar and myself have been playing together since we were kids. Like literally since we were teenagers, we've been in this IBHA and various other leagues. So I've known Shariar for quite a long time, and I definitely respect his playing style for sure. He did show up to pickup. I think he's at least from his pickup positioning, it looked like he's more maybe going to try it forward. I don't know, but he does look like he's in great shape. He mentioned that he was training over the pandemic break. And speaking of his shot, he has not only has a good slap shot, he has a pretty wicked wrister as well,
yeah,
and which
and
he did
Sherry,
use in pickup.
yeah, the nice thing about Sherry is he's very versatile. He can play forward and he can play defense.
Mhm.
Several Salam Cups ago, he and I played on the Greenbird Tier 2, and we were on the same line with I believe brother Junaid as well. So we played quite well, and his game is very simple. He takes it and goes north south. If he gets a shot, he makes it. If there's a pass available, he'll make it. So he's a really good complete player, and he's one of those guys that if you're a GM, you pick him. You pick him not only because of what he can contribute, but his versatility. If
Mhm.
this was sort of a baseball draft, he would be that utility player, switch hitter, multifaceted. So you definitely want this kind of guy on a team, especially when you know that maybe there's going to be people missing on a given week. You can easily put him. He's like an Ali Murtaza in that sense.
Well,
Now,
speaking of Wally, he's also looked really good in pickup.
Mm-hmm.
And
mhm.
he's one of those guys that's also very versatile. Like I think the running joke is that he gets drafted every year and gets put on defense, which is a testament to his ability, right? He can play on all ends of the ice, and so he's another veteran, very strong, like physically strong player that can still play at a very high level. So he's another guy I would watch out for in terms of individuals that are trending. And I would say that uh, the people that came out to pick up who are in the draft, they would have caught the eyes of some GMs, right? Because you don't know what kind of shape guys are in, whether it was the Iceland pickup or it was another pickup that was running. Like I know somebody mentioned that Wakar is playing in Milton, for instance. G plays in Milton as well. Um,
Mhm.
so you have guys that are playing, and so I think maybe guys might be giving the preference to people that they've seen play, right? As opposed to, okay, well, I have not seen Hanan play except for once, right? So I may not,
Some might question if that was even playing.
right? There you go.
Before we get off the topic of Sherry, I should also mention Sharir. He has a lot of history playing with a lot of the Tea Park guys. Apparently, he knows them since they were younger. They played together, so I wouldn't be surprised if those guys also try to snatch him up.
He's a East Ender, and actually speaking of another East Ender, Vasim Kagzi is in the draft as well.
Hmm.
Super underrated.
Mhm.
I felt like at least in the scouting report, I feel like Vasim was a little bit underrated, and he's very, very fast. He's also another guy that Shariar and I played with when we were kids. Um, he has excellent hockey IQ, and he has a shot. Right, he's one of the few players that still wear a bandana under their helmet, and but he can shoot. He can shoot the ball. He can bring the ball in. He reminds me of like Salman Khalid light, right? He's where he's able to carry the ball and having known this guy for such a long time, I can definitely think that he's one of the players to also watch in the draft.
He
He's
was he was drafted, I think, in the 6th round last season. Do you project he'll still go in the 6th round or sooner?
I think he'll go sooner, personally.
Okay.
he's a tough guy to play against too. Like he just when he's on defense, if you try to get around him or go in the corners, he's relentless. So he actually would be a very good choice for Haya for their play style.
The higher hustle, as
Yeah,
we mentioned.
when Wasim plays on D, he almost reminds me of a Lukman when you go into the corner. Like with Luke, he'll literally dive and do anything he can to get the ball. And Wasim's play is a little bit more tempered, but has that essence in him.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
One guy I see on here, and I feel like typically, from my understanding, he's drafted lower than he should be because he misses a lot of games. Is Imad Hussein, part of also the media crew? Now, for me personally, I played against Imad, and I definitely think that he's definitely a talented player. But given that it looks like he's not going to be missing as many games this season as he's done in the past, which is why he's been drafted, I think, in the latter half of the season, probably in the last 3 rounds. What round do you project Imad to go, assuming he's missing no games?
Well, Imad is one of the few players I think that has been playing pickup consistently over the pandemic, right? Obviously, as safely as possible. Imad has also been an individual that has stayed in great shape. He's actually lost a lot of weight, and since the last time that we were playing, his endurance looks great. So again, I don't know if a player's reputation in terms of like their draft reputation follows them at all. But I think all the GMs have had a really good look at Imad, right? From every team really has had a good look at Imad, and I think that we might see him, bump up maybe a round or two.
Well, Imad, I gotta say, he's also improved his IQ in terms of hockey. I don't know about the other IQ, but his hockey IQ is pretty good in the sense that during COVID, for those who don't know, we've been playing a lot of PlayStation NHL, and we play a lot of Shell. And as funny as it sounds, but when you play that and the amount of games we've played, you start to see the entire ice, right, in the video game, and you start to develop a sense of where players are, where players should be, etc. And when sort of our COVID chill ended and Imad started coming back into pickup games, you could see that he's become a much better center in the sense that he knows where to be. He's actually developing into a good, well-rounded two-way forward.
Yep, I can vouch for that assessment.
Now, another name I see on here is Riaz Hussein. He's been drafted last season. He came in drafted last round. Brothers of Omar Hussein, who was drafted first round. Now that I think Riaz has had a little bit more exposure, especially in the pickup, do you find that he'll obviously be higher drafted than last season, where he was drafted in the last round?
He played well. I mean, we were on his team. He played well last season. I don't know if playing with his brother was a factor, because I know his brother's not in this draft. Omar is not playing this season. I don't know. I don't know if his brother may have propped up his game a little bit and really just made it easier for him to play, or if there was something else there. Like, he does have excellent hands, right? He has excellent hands, just like his brother. He's also knows to get in the right spots. So I think he may be one of those. I know that Omar and his brothers are affiliated with the Greenbirds, so he may be one of the picks, right, on the quote unquote Greenbird teams. And maybe they're looking at him as a bit of a sleeper that can play with some of the other younger kids.
Well, listen, when you play with Omar Hussein, it doesn't matter who it is, you become better. Omar makes you better. However, that shouldn't take away from Riaz's game. He, on his own merit, is also has become a pretty good player. I think in the past he was looked at a younger junior player, so he always went near the bottom rounds. If GMs are going to ignore him, they're going to be sorry because he doesn't belong in the bottom rounds. He should go somewhere in the middle at this point.
Well, his beard connects now, so.
Oh man.
One player that I don't think I played with him in the previous pickup. I think he was in a different session, but we were all in the same session on last Friday, and so I got to see him for the first time in my life play. Really, is Khalil Coker. And
Yes.
so I was not familiar with him at all until somebody had mentioned on the bench he's a Montreal legend. And
Was it his nephew?
no, it wasn't. His nephew was on the other team. Somebody else had mentioned it, and oh man, he has an excellent shot, like really, really blistering slap shot. And he has really, really high hockey IQ. I know he's rated, at least he's ranked a little bit higher up there, but he can play the game, man. I was very impressed.
Yeah, I played on the same line with him last week for pickup. I can concur. He took like one of the goals. He just stepped over the blue line and let it rip, and the goalie had no chance. But it wasn't just a shot. Even his playmaking, he set me up on a few plays there. Yeah, I think he's going to be. I wouldn't say he's like the top in the first couple of rounds, perhaps, but whichever team he goes on, he will be a difference maker for that team.
Will he get drafted higher than Sakib Kokar?
Well, that depends. Do GMs want Sakib's playing ability or his shadow GMing abilities in the draft?
Yeah, another player that I think is a game breaker that is maybe not drafted as high, and it's a player that I really, really like, Rizwan Malik, right? Rizwan Malik. Oh man, I love that. First of all, he's such a nice guy.
Yeah.
And he's super motivating on the bench, right? Very encouraging. He doesn't get down on himself or on anyone else if they make a mistake. And he can score. He can still score. And I think last year, if I'm not mistaken, was he on red? He was on red last year, I think.
I think so.
I know that Akib and Lukman didn't get him, or maybe they did. There was one year they didn't get him. I think it was the year that I was on the team with them. And so he is, one of those perennial leaders that does everything so well, and so I think a team, and he's also one of the guys that can play right up and down a lineup as well.
He was actually on Lukman's team last season.
Okay, so it was the team the year before that then, because I know that Akib and Lukman they were quite upset when he was drafted from out under their feet.
Now, for some of these guys that, especially the older crowd, that we know that they brought their A games prior, but they haven't come to the exhibition games. Is there a sense or almost like an innate fear in trying to draft them in the same position that you would have drafted them normally when you're consistently playing Ice Slam? Now, there's been almost a 2-year gap since we've seen a lot of these players play. What's the fear happening on the GM side in terms of the skill level or even the fitness level of some of these players?
I mean, I personally, if I was a GM, I don't think I would care, right? Okay. I think that if I like a guy or if I know his game, then I'm drafting him, right? And I mean, the only thing that I would be concerned about if I was a GM or even as a Muslim brother in the league is that I feel like we are going to be dealing with some injuries this season, especially if guys try to push themselves too quickly, too hard if they have not been as active. So that's the only thing that you may want to factor in, but injuries are obviously unpredictable. So I don't know if that you can necessarily factor that too heavily into your decision to draft someone.
So I'm gonna throw some names here. I wonder if I can actually make them. These are players that have come back after a while, and I wanted to get your opinions on what you think of some of these guys. So one of them is this gentleman right here. Furkan Salam. I think it's been a while, but he used to be, if I'm not mistaken, he was playing Tier 1 Ice Slam back in the day as well. And I think he's quite the difference maker on the team as well.
I am not familiar with his brother,
Okay.
but I have heard really great things.
I know he's on the radar for some of the GMs for some of
Yeah.
the earlier picks, from what I've heard. So definitely, there is a buzz around him.
Mhm.
Uh, and I think that's the interesting stuff is some of these tier one guys who are coming back after so long is that they're still bringing in all this buzz, this talk, this conversation, and I think that's a lot of the hype is that when these players like Furkan come back is
Yeah.
you're trying to see what they can do because I think you're right, Omar. Even though it's been maybe 2 years, 3 years since they played, people know what that skill level is still like for these players, and within 4 or 5 weeks of playing, they can easily continuously ramp up and get back to that skill level.
Yeah. The other guy that we want to talk about is Emad Khawaja. I mean, he's not necessarily returning per se. I mean, he's been on and off the last few seasons with us. However, he got into tremendous shape over the last year or two, and I think this is probably the first time we'll see him back in his new, rebuilt physical specimen, if you will, right? Like he looks super super strong, very fast. He was always a very very good player, but now he brings the more athleticism into it as well. What do you think? He will go as?
I personally, I've seen him in the past, and I do agree with you. He's always been, a force to reckon with. I don't think there's ever been a season I've seen him not be drafted in that first round. And I'm going to go ahead and say he will be drafted in that first round as well. Where he'll actually be drafted in that first round, it's hard to say. I do, as talented as he is, I feel like there's so much depth that we're going to see him in the latter half of that first round. So the picks 4, 5, 6, 8.
He might look good with Ali Wadi.
Yeah, I mean,
he might look good. But traditionally, if I'm not mistaken, like Imad was either a GM himself or he got drafted onto like the quote unquote like the wasn't the Malton type teams.
Well, he also has some history playing for Greenbirds and playing for Team. Sorry, is playing for Team Pakistan, where him and Sajid Ayubi, I believe, they won some championships as
there you
well.
go. Yeah.
Some medals. In fact, there's pictures out there where they're sharing the medal together and stuff. So yeah, they played together. So that could be another team that he fits in really well with, like
So-
instant chemistry right there.
So probably that would probably be the 5th pick overall if Sajid ends up going straight with Imad.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be interesting. Yeah. I didn't think. Yeah, that's a excellent assessment. Yeah.
Now the other person who's coming back, and I gotta give a shout out to my man here, is Samad Hamidi. Mr. Hamidi reports himself, the
Mr.
OG
Media Team?
the OG of media video stuff. Right, so he's also coming back, and I'm happy that he is because we missed him. We missed his shenanigans both on the bench and after the games. So I gotta say, Samad, everybody gives him a bad rep sometimes, and he gets drafted pretty low. But I've always said he's mashallah, he's a good defenseman. He's obviously not your top two pairing, but he holds his own out there.
He sacrifices the body. That's what I've seen.
Yeah, he
He's
jumps
fearless. He is fearless. Okay, like I have never ever in my life seen somebody look me in the eyes as I'm winding up to take a slap shot, and literally he doesn't even flinch. He'll get down, right? He'll slide across and he'll take the slap shot right in his chest, right? And he won't even blink, right? And like so he will, and that actually it intimidates me a little bit, right? It's like, okay, well, what do I have to do to make this guy move, right? And he's the only player. He's the only player that I've ever seen do that, and he has earned my forever. He has forever earned my respect.
I think one of the things even for new players that are joining is that don't be discouraged if you're drafted in the later rounds or even the last round. A lot of it's just about building your own reputation within the league, but also using that opportunity to improve on your own game and lean on the GMs to help assist and guide you along in your path because we have seen a lot of players who started in the latter rounds. Omar Isawi, I believe you yourself were someone who started in the late rounds, and then lo and behold, we've seen you in the first round pick.
Yeah, I mean, guy, when it takes a while to establish yourself, and then also to be given the trust to contribute, right? And so I think that again, new players to the league, Do your best, work really hard, and take advantage when you're given the opportunity to maybe move up a little bit in the lineup. Maybe there is an injury or somebody's away that week, and you have to slot up and make the most. Like, I mean, I can say, Hanan is an individual that also seizes that opportunity,
Mhm.
where Hanan might be initially slotted onto like the second line or third line, but then somebody's
Yeah.
away, and then all of a sudden, he's the first line center on black, right? and
Yeah.
uh, and he takes advantage of that, right? And he scores a couple of goals, and guys are like, "Oh, well, maybe we can slot this guy in on the power play."
Yeah.
So make the
I,
most
I,
of it.
I yeah.
Hanan's transformation happened once he shed the white karate pants.
Once he
Right?
embraced the compression tight.
He's like a beautiful butterfly that the caterpillar shed his karate pants and now became.
I wasn't ashamed of my leg hair
Didn't
anymore.
didn't Arsenal also shed his karate pants?
Arcel, he didn't have karate pants, but he would typically have joggers and whatnot. And then
Mm.
that's a good segue because I actually highlighted him because he's another one of those guys where you almost forget about him in the draft, and all of a sudden you realize that caliber of a person is still available because he's also one of those guys that plays really well defense, but I knew him since he was much younger in Montreal, and he was a phenomenal forward, and he still has the skills and the hands for it. So
I think he's
again,
been GM a few times. That's probably attributed to it. But I do agree with you. I also project Arsenal to go somewhere in the first round as well, just because, like you said, the caliber of a player he is, like
yeah,
the ball handling, the ball movement, the depth of the game. He's able to see the full rink, and I any team that has him will know they have a strong asset as a top 1-2 defenseman on their team.
He
yeah.
also doesn't get tired. Like, he just never
Oh
tired,
yeah, I'm sick.
right?
He's an Energizer bunny.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Like, I played on the team with Arsenal, I think once or twice, and he just never gets tired, right? And he's like, okay, you're like huffing and puffing on the bench. He's like, okay, you just take an extra shift off. I'll take care of this. And it's a testament, right, to his fitness level. So that's again, I agree. I agree. First round, inshallah.
How about this gentleman right here?
Moody. So funny enough, a story about Hamoudi is that I actually played against him in a East League before Iceland. And this was before my injury and I had my herniated disc. And I don't know why, but for some reason, when I was watching my first Iceland game before I ever joined, I noticed him right away. Just how could you miss Hamoudi? He's this tall tree and he's in everyone's way. But like the amount of asset Hamoudi himself brings on the defensive line is that he's just so solid on the ball. Like it's hard to get it off of him. He's got a great shot. He brings that leadership present in himself. I don't see him going first round, but I do believe he is a strong defenseman that someone will pick up in the second round or early third round.
Well, the thing about Hamoudi, that he can also play forward.
Yeah.
And the last summer season that we have, he actually played center. He started at defense, and then he moved to center, and then he won MVP. In the
Really?
summer. Yeah.
Do you think any team will, so knowing this, because every time I've seen Hamoudi play, I think immediately all the GMs think, all right, let's throw him on defense. Is there any GM trio here you think is thinking maybe he's more valuable on forward, or it's just the value he brings on defense is that you can't really risk bringing him on forward?
No, I would personally draft him as a defenseman, but maybe on the power play I would put him up.
Or what you do is, even though you have enough defensemen, you get a guy like Hamoudi so that you take him away from other teams, and then you throw him forward on your team, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, he's one of those people you could tell him in the middle of the game, hey, I need you to play forward, and he'll do it. It's not a problem.
So are we going to see a full Arab team here, like Hamoudi? You can have like
Tahir
Taher
Maruf, we didn't talk about him.
and
Habibi. So there is enough if we want to segregate by ethnicity.
Tahir Marouf's an interesting player. I believe he was a latecomer for last season, if I'm not mistaken. Was he? Someone dropped out and he filled a slot.
I think on red, you're right.
And he was, he did his best, and like he's a standout player in himself. I always find, and
fast, like he's extremely fast, like he's very fast. I would say like I put him in a category with with Hamza, right? that he's that fast. But yeah, he's another skilled guy that can contribute up and down the lineup. Tahir can also play defense if needed, so he's very versatile as well.
Yeah, Tahir is he's one of those guys who's on the cusp of sort of being a first line player or a second line player. Like he can juggle in both areas where he can carry a second line
Mhm.
or he can add tremendous support on a first line because he has a lot of stamina. He just relentless forechecking. That's again, you know what? That's a perfect Haya candidate right there too.
Yep.
Now, I mean, maybe this is a little bit more of a big question, but looking at the third line, I always find that a lot of teams utilize their third line forwards as the hey, just make sure you get the ball in the other end, and just make sure the ball doesn't go in on your end. But when you talk about Iceland, there's always been days where you never get your full team available. And as you mentioned, Omar, like for myself, I've been humbled enough that I've been able to play on the first line because the team doesn't show up, and the GM at the time trusts me. Out of the people that who are typically drafted in the for third line, which ones do you find, or are you not going to be essentially shocked to see get bumped up to that second or first line and play with those guys as well?
I mean, just looking at the list, right? You have Habibi, you have Ahmed Ibrahim, right? He's one of those guys you plant in front of the net, regardless of the line. You have I just had him here.
I see.
You have Abasa Marshi, right? Who is also super skilled. Who I mean, he played defense that last season, but he's someone that can also move around in the entire lineup and still contribute. You have someone like Ibrahim Khan, who came out to pick up, right? He has very nice, very good hands. He's someone that can move up and down in the lineup. You have Ahmed Khalid, and I'm surprised that he's where he is on the scouting report, but like this kid can play. And I think he caught the eyes of many GMs at pickup as well. He was the guy in the Bozak jersey, I think, when he came out. But he's fast. He has hands. He can pass. He can shoot. So that's a guy that might get drafted later in the draft. But he's someone that will probably find himself on the first or second line.
But it's not a surprise though because he played a few seasons ago, actually on our team, and he won Rookie of the Year that year.
Oh wow!
Right, so he's not a new guy necessarily. It's actually going to be his second year playing, but he played really well that first year. He got a major award. So yeah, I think he's going to be a good one. And another one I want to maybe push out here is this person here. Sorry, not Dan. I think it's Danish. Maybe you know what? They're both Danish and Daniel Khan.
But are they related or?
I don't know, but if it's the brother, I think it is. I think it's Danish Khan. In pickup, he had a gray T-shirt with a full cage.
That's him. That's him.
Yeah. So he could be one of those guys that gets picked later, but somehow finds himself playing on a slightly higher line because I saw some good hustle out of him. He had some good forechecking and ball handling. So I think he could be a good pick for in the later round.
Osama Rao, he's another guy that sometimes gets drafted a little bit later, but finds himself on the higher lines. He brings energy. He has speed. He also has a good shot. You have Mohamed Qureshi, right? He is another, a prototypical high hustle player, but he's also a guy that can move up and down in the lineup as well. And you have Salman Azmat. Salman Azmat is another guy that can, possibly move up in the lineup. He's someone that also takes a lot of feedback, and he grows with it. How interesting would it be though to see Mobeen move up in the lineup?
You know what I saw? It's funny because Mobeen posted something on Instagram where he was, he did some practice shots and stuff, and I wouldn't be surprised. This is a mixtape. I don't know what isn't a mixtape supposed to be like? Like when you were rapping or when you make singing, like.
No, I don't know. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Maybe
I think
it's a tryout.
Yeah. So for Mobeen, I think he's going to be drafted late, but I think he's going to be an underdog. I think he's going to bring a lot of value to the team he ends up being on. But I think it's just that not a lot of people are going to see it because he's typically played goalie here, so coming out, we see a lot of the goalies, when they do play out, like I think
Fahad.
Mobeen, Fahad, thank you, Fahad. Like they're incredible players in itself. So I do believe that Mobeen will be drafted late, but whichever team picks him will be happy with the results.
Well, we
his
have this
fitness-
comment here, Rexdale's royalty. Who is this? Is this Mobeen?
No,
Someone else. The question is, what happened to a goalie segment? Some fire goalies in the mix. Yeah, no doubt. We actually wanted to invite Fahad over as a guest for today's podcast to give us his thoughts on the goalie situation. Unfortunately, we couldn't book his time. But let's segue into the goalies. Let's talk about some of these guys. How are you ranking these guys?
So I'll start.
I don't want to know. I don't know if I want to be so bold enough as to rank the goalies and then have them laugh in my face if they shut me out.
No, see, that's the thing I find with these goalies, that like it's not just about the goalie, but I always find that it's the defense in front of them that, how easy you make the shots, how difficult you make it. But, looking at the goalies as themselves, as individual entities, it is very close, I find, with all the goalies in terms of the talent level there is. There's no one that's like eye-popping, like this, above and beyond everyone else, for me personally. And, I've seen some of these goalies in pickup as well. So I know, as talented as they are, I think it's well balanced. And I want to stick with that, where I don't think, being panicked to draft your goalie early is the way to go. I think, just draft a middle goalie and you'll be content. And unless, is there a goalie out here that you guys are seeing, you're like, no, this, whoever drafts them is going to be above and beyond everyone else?
Well, is Mohamed Patel's Badger?
Yeah.
Yep, that's a Badger.
Yeah, so he's likely going to go to his crew of Mandra, Kazi, and Huzaifa,
Maybe.
right?
No, my personal opinion is that Badger is probably the best goalie in this draft, right?
Mhm.
Just because I've played with him. I've seen him in pickup, right? He is still in form. He's still in shape, right? And so he's also well known. Like, I mean, yes, his friends are on one particular team, but it's not like he's a sleeper, right?
Yeah.
I think all the GMs know him, and I think all the GMs would be able to pick him and obviously have him play for them, and they'd be happy with that. But in my opinion, I would say it may not be much. It might be like a 1A, 1B, 1C type thing. But if I was a GM and I was looking, if I had my pickup goalie, I would probably pick Badger.
But knowing the goalies that are here today, how would you go out of your way to pick Badger and make sure you pick Badger first? Or would you not risk it until like later in the rounds? And you're like, if no one's picked a goalie until like round 8, then yeah, sure. Like I'll pick Badger. Like what's the demand? Like how I guess better question, when will be the first goalie picked in terms of draft round for you personally?
So I think you made a good point with regards to considering the defense that's in front of the goalie, because I think that makes a big impact, right? All of the goalies that are here can stop a shot that they can see. I don't think that any of these goalies are gonna play badly if they can see, have a good look at the shot and square up to the shot.
The ones that couldn't are now playing forward.
Right, so I don't think that's the case. I think all these goalies can stop a clean shot. But I think you may have teams that maybe are more confident in their defense that might wait, right? And then you may have a GM trio that has 3 guys, right, that are forwards, and say, okay, well, you know what, we're going to take a couple of defensemen in the first 2 rounds to shore up our defense, and then maybe we'll snag a goalie. But I personally think that a goalie will probably go in round 4 or 5, I think. And I think once one goalie goes, it'll be a domino effect. I think the rest of the GMs will sort of say, okay, well, there's a goalie that I feel strongly about picking, and I need to get that guy before somebody else takes him.
Well, let me make a comment about one of the goalies, Imran Alvi. For those who know him, he's, mashallah, one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. He's so cool. I played, during COVID in the middle where we were out of lockdown for a little bit, where we could have 10 people, sort of practicing, if you will. So he came out to a couple of those games, and that's probably the worst I've seen Imran play, and he will be the first one to admit it. He had a hard time, understandably so. We were all out of shape and whatnot. But since then, all the pickups that I've seen him play, and especially last week, he played unbelievable. He was making some crazy saves. It looked like vintage Imran, and I think in that sense he's peaking at the right time. So if people are worried about which Imran they're getting, right now they're getting primetime Imran.
Yeah, and when Imran's on, like I mean, I played with him. We won a
Mhm.
championship together, and when Imran's on, man, he's locked in, and nothing's getting by him. Right? He's again very similar to Ali Khwaja. When Ali Khwaja is locked in and he's on, like
Yep.
personally speaking, like I have not been able to score a goal on Ali Khwaja since I started playing. Right, and so
Ali's tough, yeah.
that's something I'm well aware of, and something that I'm hoping to rectify.
If Ali sees the shot, he's going to stop it.
Yeah,
Out of all the goalies you see here today, who would you say is the flashiest?
the flashiest.
Flashes like what in terms of just making a save?
Yeah, like who do you think who's the highlight reel goalie?
Yusuf Kapoor for me.
Yusuf Kapoor.
For me.
For me, it's Mohamed Patel. I just because I did play with them last season, and
Mhm.
man, I honestly think that team did only so well because of Mohamed Patel and what he did and some of the highlight reel saves he made.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it had nothing to do with his defense. That was me.
Well, so it almost looks like the goalies also have sort of a segregation in terms of age, right? You have the elder statesmen in Ali Khawaja, maybe Khalid Mufti, Yasser Hussain, and then you have some of the more younger guys as well in there, right? Does that make a difference at the goalie level?
Not in a
Oh.
40-minute game, not in my opinion.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
I think having a solid defense for the older goalies is key in the sense that you don't want to bombard them with multiple shots at once. I think they will start getting sluggish. But I think if you have a steady stream of shots here and there with solid defense in front, like every goalie is going to play at the same caliber. But I feel like some of these older guys might just get tired.
I think what you're probably alluding to is that the defensemen will need to take care of any second chance opportunities, right? So you may rely on the goalies to make the first save,
Yeah,
but you don't want a shooter to get a second opportunity on a rebound or something like that. You want the defenseman to basically step in and say, okay, well, that's all the opportunity that you're going to get.
Well, remember, this is also at this point, at the start at least, it's almost like a summer league, right? Maybe later in the season, it's going to get colder and whatnot. But to start the season, it's pretty hot in the hangar. And we've already seen goalies, complain about heat and being tired. Granted, we were playing 2 hours of pickup, right? But all those pads and stuff, they do add to fatigue.
Yeah, and I mean, in all fairness, I think that the goalies will switch ends, right? Do they? They don't switch ends, or they stay in the same net?
they switch ends.
Yeah, so somebody will be closer to the door that will be open for 20
Mhm.
minutes for half the game. And there's more stoppages, right, in a regular game than there might be in a pickup game, right? And then you're also not asking somebody to play for 2 hours.
That's true. Um, Moving a little bit off the goalies, I did have a question, more so for you, Omar, just because you yourself being a top caliber defenseman. Out of the people you see here on this list, your third and fourth defense pair. For you, what's your bread and butter? Like, who do you want to see? For me, I do like Omar Sadat and Khalid Mughal. Both bigger, both with nice shots. Khalid Mughal, a little bit of the older veteran presence, but he
I
does
think you're
put his
thinking of Sadat Malik, not Omar Sadat. Omar Sadat plays forward.
Oh,
You think about
was it
Sadat
Sadat
Malik?
Malik? Sadat Malik? Sorry, Sadat Malik. So Sadat Malik, I feel like he's like Lukman's go-to guy if he can get him as soon as he can. But I think a lot of people know the value he brings as a defense.
Yeah, so coincidentally, I've played with both of those brothers, and they're stellar defensemen, right? They are both very reliable defensive defensemen. For the most part, they can still score. Like Khalid Mughal still has a wicked slap shot.
100%.
But both of those individuals have been my D partners, and what I found advantageous was that they would cover me basically when I would go and try to be a little bit more offensive.
Mhm.
And same thing with a guy like Omar Din. Omar Din is another guy that I played with.
Yep.
And he's again very similar style. And so I gelled well with those individuals just because they would basically hold down the fort if I tried to get more offense in. I would also peg like Abbas Amarshi, right? If he chooses to play D or if his team wants him to play D.
Hmm.
I would say
How's Zuhair Fancy? Have you ever played with him?
I never played. I played with him 1 year, right? Mostly against him. I still have all the scratches and the
How's the
bruises.
face wash?
Face wash.
You'd have to ask him. It seemed like it was it seemed like it was pretty impactful. So you'd have to ask him about it.
All right, let's. We're coming down to the hour here, so I have a couple of questions to ask here. One would be actually this: players you hate playing against, players you don't want to have to play against. Usually, it's a compliment because they're so good. Who do you
Yeah.
not want to play with so bad that you rather have on your team?
For me, if we're talking about the latter, like typically not looking at the top, obviously got the tier 1 guys, but I've always found Zuhair Fancy pretty stubborn as a defenseman in the sense that, he's not going to hesitate to take out your body. And
Knees or your ankle.
your knee, yeah. I didn't say it. And then also, I mean, it's, just saying defenseman again, because I play forward, Sadat Malik, I always found that, he's always been very stubborn. Hamoudi, some of these big defensemen who know how to utilize their body to keep, other individuals away from the ball. Like they're the ones that for me are always stubborn. I always like to see them on my team versus having to see them across for me.
Yeah.
I don't like playing against Omar Mahmoud, right? He is a very difficult person to get around, right?
Yeah.
He's just, and also like when he chooses to play forward, he's also a really hard person to stop. Like he has this thing where he does where like he'll run down the wing, and he has very deceptive speed, by the way, right? So you don't think he's as fast as he actually is, and then he dropped the shoulder and cut to the front of the net. And once he drops the shoulder, it's almost impossible to do anything at that point, right? Like you're gonna either end up taking a penalty or he's gonna end up scoring a goal, right? Because the only way to stop him at that point is to do something that might be fringy legal and interfere with him, hook him, do something. So I personally find it really hard to get around him. So I don't really like playing against him, or I find it challenging to play against him. And then also as a defenseman, when he plays forward, it's also very challenging for me as well.
Yeah, if he just keeps his head up a little bit more, he gets so many opportunities to make a pass. But because he's more focused on trying to keep the ball on his stick, he sometimes loses those brief windows of opportunity to make a really good pass. But mashallah, he's still a good player to pick up.
I think Gashif is also one of those guys where he's always tough to play against. And then he always takes these bad penalties anyway, so it doesn't matter.
All right. Next, probably the last question here, guys, for tonight is what's more rare, defensemen or pure scorers? Because, we're always talking about having a bona fide defenseman is hard, but also teams just finding pure scorers. There's a lot of guys who can grind it out, who can, be a playmaker, this and that. But a pure scorer, for example, a Bijabhai, like these guys are pretty hard to get. Where are they going to be in the picks?
Or an RF Khan, as we know. I mean, for me, obviously, when we're talking about defensemen, I always find it's rare to find a defenseman with a good shot that you can rely on the back end, someone like Omar Isawi. But for me, you can stop all the shots you want, but you got to score, and having a pure score is for me is the top key point. Especially if you're in a draft and if you're lacking anything, that's the one thing you don't want to lack.
Yeah, because you have guys like Suleiman Batti, right? As we said, Arif Bijabhai. These guys, they probably won't go in the first round or even second round this year. However, they probably will end up playing wing on one of the first lines of one of the teams just because they can finish. Yep. They can shoot.
I wouldn't be I wouldn't be surprised if we'll see that kind of shifting around of players where, like you said, like these RF Bijabais or Solan Batti, where they'll be drafted lower, but they'll still end up. And it's not that teams will have a line 1, 2, 3. They'll just have a 1A, 1B, 1C. And I think that's what we're going to see a lot of in the draft is a lot of these, depths on the forward lines where everyone will be able to contribute. And I think that's going to be key for some of the people drafted in a later round is knowing that you have to step up because you're playing with people that they expect people to play at their caliber.
I'm. It's an interesting question that you'll ask, right? Because I do think that pure scorers are more rare than like strong defensemen. I think personally speaking, I think defense is a quite simple position to play. You have to just basically stay in your position. I think what's harder about having a good defenseman is once they've broken up the play, that they know what to do with the ball,
Mhm.
right? And so that's where I think is maybe there's a little bit of a gap. I don't think it's hard to find a good defenseman. I think anybody can be a good defenseman if they simplify their game. But that being said, I think that there are times where these pure scores they'll take liberties that especially on offense, right, where they may not come back to help on the play, right. And so that's been my experience so far in Islam is that what you may have a pro. I'm not talking about Arif or Solomon because those
Razi
guys are actually
Ahmed,
very sorry.
come back on defense.
Oh,
Razi Ahmed.
oh, because those guys are quite defensively responsible. But when you're talking about, I think of like if we're talking Chell, I'm thinking about like snipers, right? Who
Mm.
are very good at one thing, right? And not necessarily the most conscious about defense, right? So I think it's a balancing act. I do think having a pure scorer is probably more rare than being able to have a competent defenseman. But that being said, I don't know if a pure scorer will basically put you over the top and make sure that you're winning every single game.
Mm-hmm. Nope, that's a fair comment. That's a fair comment. So, guys, it's almost at the top of the hour here. So, thank you very much for joining. It's there's definitely a lot more we can talk about. If we haven't, there's not enough time to talk about every single player. So, unfortunately, if we didn't get to talk about you, don't feel bad. It's not like we're shading you or anything like that. It's just we just didn't get to talk about you on this podcast. Um, continue to follow us on these on these live streams, and we welcome these kind of questions and chat that we can actually answer in real time. Also need
We
to
will also
remind.
we will be commenting on most players during the draft, right?
Mhm.
So if your name wasn't mentioned, you can be relatively confident that inshallah we'll have something good to say to you guys or about you guys on Wednesday, right, Arif?
Yeah, so I was just going to say that the draft is going to be on Wednesday, inshallah. So at 8 o'clock is when the GMs are going to get together in their room, and the commission is going to give them the ground rules. Then we'll probably break for Maghrib prayers, and I believe at 8:45 p.m. Eastern time, that is when the first GM is going to be on the clock, which is 60 seconds to make their choice. So we're gonna be publishing the stream link ahead of time. So please join us, and it'll be fun because we really want to also hear what your opinions are as things are happening. So
Absolutely.
it's going to be an interesting thing even for the media team. Where we have some big goals and ambitions this year to make things even bigger and better for you. So hope you enjoy it, and give us your feedback that if we're actually doing things in the right way.
For sure.
It's gonna be exciting. I
I'm
think
excited.
draft day is what a lot of people are looking forward, and we can see the hype across the different media outlets that we have.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited about this analysis format that we're going to be doing. I'm really excited to see how the teams shape up and to hear what you guys maybe if I'm included in the panel to see what we have to what teams are going to be coming forth with. I'm
Mm.
hearing
Yeah.
rumblings of a possible exhibition game soon, so let's
That'd be nice.
see how this shakes out.
It'll be fun.
All right. Well, Emad is messaging me on the side saying that Isawi is falling asleep. So on that note,
I'm looking at my laptop. My laptop is down here. I can't lift it up. It's gonna. There's my laptop, and that's where I have my notes.
yeah. So, all right, guys, that's it for tonight. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
All right, well, I guess
I guess
guys. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Bye.